I'm Alan Kogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations. Garrett, Zach, we're here at Noble Stein Brewing in Indiana, Pennsylvania.
It is a real place.
It is a real place. I had no idea that Indiana, Pennsylvania was a place. I know Pittsburgh. I've been through Pittsburgh. I've never actually been to the area. And my good friend Alec, who will be pouring us beers behind the scenes, is an employee here. And he said, come talk to my guys at Noble Stein. I said, absolutely, let's do it. So first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course. Happy to have you.
Yeah. Well, let's just start out with how you got into the business. Tell me about yourselves and why are you in this crazy world?
Let you lead off.
Want me to start with that?
You started the business. So.
Fair. It's been a journey. So I actually started home brewing my senior year of college. That was back in 2010, and it was actually at IUP here in Indiana.
Oh, wow.
So my wife bought me a homebrew kit for my birthday that year, and I bet she regrets it at this point. Yeah, maybe not. But so I got a bunch of friends together. We brewed in this tiny apartment kitchen. I think that we probably made the whole house smell of hops and, just drinking pretty much. So we brewed a beer that wasn't or isn't even a real style. It was a Canadian ale. So that was the kit name. Wow. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't
Molson.
I thought maybe Molson, but I knew Molson was a lager. We brewed it. We had a great time. We drank a little bit while we were doing it. And bottling came around, bottled it up, and probably 3-4 weeks from then, we cracked it. I remember the exact moment at a buddy's house. Cracked it open. All of us had the same response. It's actually drinkable. We were shocked because I know from my experiences after that not everything turns out drinkable. So we did that. I started coming back to Indiana after I moved down to Pittsburgh to homebrew with some friends. And that was probably from about 2011 to 2013, 14. And we started to really seriously consider opening a spot. So at the time, there were no breweries in Indiana. Now we share our town with Levity Brewing down the road, and it's been a great relationship with them. We've collaborated with them countless times. That led me all the way to starting the brewery back in 2016, and haven't looked back since.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
How about you, Garrett?
I had no real involvement in beer, and my now wife, we were dating at the time, and her best friend is Zach's sister. And so we started hanging out around here, started to get a taste for beer, and started hanging out. I was going to Pitt at the time, and I ended up moving back home and went to Pitt Greensburg, and I was commuting to school, and then started working here as a bartender. I was finishing up my degree. While I was finishing up my degree, Zach was asking me what I wanted to do with my future, and I was like, well, I'm a history major, so I don't know what I'm possibly going to do with my future. And I started shadowing him on brew days. Never brewed before in my life. Started shadowing him and caught onto it pretty quickly, and started to really master it. And Zach said, well, you have a full-time job here if you want it after you graduate. So after that, I started here full-time and haven't looked back since. I think that was in 2019. I started brewing full-time.
Wow.
And so I've been doing it for, what is it? What would it be, about 5 years?
About 5 years.
5 years in April or May.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Time flies, bud.
Yeah, no
Very
kidding.
fast. It feels just like yesterday that I was just learning how to brew and shadowing you.
Yep.
And it's been quite a ride.
I was going to, how do you, going from history major to brewmaster, that's pretty neat. Was
Yeah.
that a big a learning experience for you? Did you?
Yeah, I grew up on a dairy farm, so I was like really familiar with kind of workflows and dealing with equipment like this. There's a lot of stainless and piping and everything like that. So a lot of that stuff, I was actually picked it up fairly quickly.
I was jealous. I watched him with the tri-clamps and hoses, and I was just like, you have done this before. I, on the other hand, fumbled around, dropped it 20 times.
Right.
And he's running laps around me very quickly with that. So
Well, that sounds like a good partnership.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I had a really good teacher, very patient with me in my learning experience.
How much of an uphill battle was it for you to open a brewery? Because all the laws in this country are so weird. I've traveled around different states, and Pennsylvania is one of the weird ones.
Yeah.
Was that a big learning? Like, a lot of people I've talked to have said, like, had we known the process back in the day, we probably wouldn't have done this.
That's a really good question. It's something I haven't thought a lot about recently, but I remember very clearly the different hurdles that we had to clear. There were a lot of inspection-related items. There were a lot of bureaucratic items wherein, you're communicating with all kinds of forms and files, and it was frustrating at times, honestly, because it took so much back and forth to get things accomplished. But I will say that in spite of the fact that it was a bit of a difficult bureaucratic endeavor, we were actually building out the brewery at that time. So it didn't feel as maddening, I think, as it could have. If we were moving into a turnkey type of place, it would have been, I can't wait for tomorrow to see if I get something in the mail, right?
Right.
But we were actually all here, weekend after weekend, building out the place, splitting up the duties. So it was frustrating in its own right, but I think there were enough positive distractions at the time that it didn't convince me that I shouldn't have done it. We'll put it that way.
Well, thank God for that.
Yeah, that's true.
And are you both from the area?
Yeah.
Originally?
Yeah, I grew up here. I honestly lived the majority of my life about 2.5, 3 miles away from right here.
Wow.
So
I grew up about 25 minutes outside of town. Yeah,
So that's got to be like a point of pride for you both to have a cool small craft distiller. I'm showing myself. Craft brewery, in a local community that you've been raised in.
Yeah, that was definitely a big draw for opening here. I thought that the area was rife with people that would be interested in this type of thing. There was a very active homebrew club, long before we ever opened. So that to me was a good signal. Folks here are looking for a product like this.
And I'm sure the community's response has been awesome.
fantastic.
We're incredibly grateful. The regulars, the craft beer community has embraced this place for years and years. We would be nothing without all of those folks. And we have a mug club that's got 130 plus members. It just blows my mind to think that there are that many people locally that want to regularly sit at our bar and drink our beer. So
I one of the coolest parts about the craft industry, whether it be in spirits or wine or in beer, the explosion in craft alcohol has been massive in the last 10 to 15 years. And craft beer and the IPA industry has gone crazy. Craft bourbon has been crazy. But the cool part about what you guys are doing is you are the owners and operators. Right. You can play around. And part of what is so attractive to me about what your story is that you can play and experiment. You can decide to make a fun new product that doesn't exist out there. Was that the attractive part to you, that you could just kind of do what you wanted and make? I mean, obviously you have to fill the cash register and pay the overhead, but you get to play. Yeah,
I do think for me that was a definite appeal. Coming from a financial background, my perspective was actually, it was I think a somewhat unique perspective when I've talked with other breweries, but my background influenced me to want to have a diverse tap list. And so, of course, that still enables you to play around, but it also, I think, sets forth some standards like, hey, these are probably going to sell well. You probably want to have this, that, and the other on.
Right.
And then those other slots you can fill with whatever you might be interested in. So I think that finding the balance and recognizing that that's absolutely part of this whole industry, that creativity, those unique experiences, absolutely a huge part of it, but also balancing that with the things that are more familiar, frankly. So,
I mean, and you're brewmaster, so I'm sure. I mean, do you have to ask him for permission, or can he just play?
Not too much anymore. I think we kind of transitioned into me calling a lot of the shots with that stuff. But for a while it was, can we do this? Can we do that?
That's true.
But it's just finding what people like, even if that means it's not something that you're like loving brewing, like seltzers and sours and stuff like that. They're pretty easy, but they sell really fast. My interest is in brewing like lagers and stuff that are more technically difficult.
Sure.
Which has actually been great recently. There's been a big push for lagers, lower ABV stuff, like stuff that tastes really simple, but because it tastes simple, it's more technically hard to produce.
Right.
And so I take a lot more pride in those products than I do with some of the other stuff that you kind of just dump fruit or hops into. So it's actually been great. I mean, I've found a lot more interest in brewing those lagers because it's historical, very technical, and you kind of just try and see how well you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been pretty successful and got a good reputation with our lagers, and that makes me feel really good because they are more technically difficult.
Yeah, a little bit more TLC put into
Exactly.
the process.
Yep.
And I'm sure you probably found accidents along the way that, oh, wow, this actually sells better than we thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
how much of that has been a trial and error of figuring out what is the selling? Like, we have to keep this sour on because it sells well,
Yeah.
but then we find people who are interested. Oh, you guys make a lager too? I don't know much about that. I know
Yeah.
what Yingling is, and that's all I know.
Right.
Yep.
So how's that process been? Has it been difficult?
I would say that it has not been difficult in the traditional sense of trying to get it right, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that, going back to the community of folks that is frequently in here, we're having regular conversations, whether it was myself or Garrett when we were bartending, or any of the folks that are back behind the bar these days. I think that people are happy to provide feedback. And on top of that, we've got data to actually look and see here is what's selling.
Right.
It has been interesting from 2016 till now to see how the tap list has evolved.
Totally.
We went from having 5 beers on tap when we opened to now 13 or 14
Sure.
at any given point. So that in and of itself gives us a little bit more flexibility. Obviously, we've had a few duds along the way, and I still get heat for those. There's one lemon cookie mosaic. Yep.
Yeah.
He knew right away. That beer forever I will be hazed about that. Sometimes you get it wrong, and that's one instance where I did.
What was that, lemon cookie mosaic?
Yeah,
What was that?
it was a milkshake IPA
Oh,
brewed with lemon and vanilla, and I thought, I love lemon,
yeah.
and I think the can sold pretty well, but that just lingered on draft for a couple of months,
Yeah.
maybe more than a couple.
Few months.
But I think Alec really liked it though.
Yeah, I mean, I may have come in when Nate was actively trying to give away.
Well, it sounds delicious.
We tried.
What about? Were there any surprising things that you didn't expect your IPA or your hazy IPA to be? Yeah, I've talked to a lot of brewers that are like, "Oh, we had to make a hazy IPA because everyone loves IPAs," and then it's like number 4, and they're like, "Crap."
Mhm.
I thought maybe the market's shifting.
No, that's a
There's
great
definitely a market
question.
shift.
Yeah. I think Garrett kind of touched on it with lagers and how those have started to, be more popular here really within the last 2.5 years. But yeah, what about, I know with our hazies, whenever we started brewing more,
Mhm.
that was one thing that we both were surprised with because
Yeah.
for the longest time we had one or two that we rotated, but
Mhm.
then Garrett came up with a couple of additional recipes, and I thought, wow, they've really, hit it out. He's hit it out of the park with those. So
Yeah, they've been. Well, what's interesting is the Therapy Chicken is our hazy IPA. Not the biggest seller in house because I think we have like a more population around here that likes the lower ABV like lager stuff. But we sell in Pittsburgh and Westmoreland County, and it's our number 1 external seller.
Mhm.
But in house, it's probably number 4 or 5.
I think that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's about finding that balance
Mhm.
for sure.
That's actually a good segue too. I'm curious about distribution. How does it work in Pennsylvania? What can you do? Where are you at?
Pennsylvania is a self-distribution state.
Okay.
So we can sell directly to our license holders, H license holders, and deliver to them ourselves.
Oh.
So it does afford us a nice amount of flexibility. I personally think that from a policy perspective, that is a bit more friendly to small business because it gives us control of the pricing of our product without worrying about other overhead being charged. I really like that. It also gives us the chance to have the direct relationship with our restaurant partners.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we just, as a quick side note, we literally this past week just released a house beer with a restaurant down in Greensburg. They asked us to brew their house beer, which is incredible. And so our system in this state allows us to very easily do that.
That's cool.
So right now, we've got about 90 active accounts all throughout about 9 counties. So most of it is clustered in Indiana and Westmoreland County, with some in Allegheny, Jefferson, Cambria, and a few others. So,
Very neat.
Yeah.
Is there a like a brewers guild or like are you connected with a bunch of other breweries in Pennsylvania? I know you and Levity are the only ones in Indiana. Were you guys first before Levity?
No, they opened I think about
months.
10 months
Yeah.
before us, something like that.
But right in the same.
Yeah, same year.
Gotcha. So you guys are connected and work together, and I've been to Levity too. Alec took me there, and they're great. You guys are both great, but you have that little community right here. But are you in contact with other brewers in Pennsylvania itself?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that we kind of stay in touch and stay networked. So there's Brewers in Pennsylvania, Brewers of Pennsylvania. That's an industry group.
Yeah.
I know that Pittsburgh specifically has the Pittsburgh Brewery Guild, but they do have geographic limitations on that. So I know we fall outside of their, geographic distance from Pittsburgh by probably 5 or 10 miles. But, that I know they're very active. They've done a lot of really cool things, gotten a lot of public support funding wise, which has been great for the industry. So.
Alec and I were talking yesterday about how we had a beer here, we had a beer at Levity. He's showing me around the town. But how cool it is that it's not really a competition between all the different craft breweries that are around. And also, like, Miller Coors isn't threatened by you. Yingling's not threatened by you. They don't really care. They're doing their thing. But you get to kind of play in the space and work together and build a bunch of different cool flavors and collaborate.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's been fun for you.
Oh, yeah. It's always nice to collaborate with different members of the industry because you get different palates, different interests, you get different perspectives.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have more information. The more information you have, the better you can come up with an idea of how to brew something or what you want to brew or who you want to target, like who you want your targeted audience to be.
Right.
And you wouldn't get that if you just kind of insulated yourself and never talked to anyone. And so it's really different in this industry because you get a great opportunity to have conversations with everyone. And you don't feel like they feel threatened by you. You don't feel threatened by them. It's really just a very unique industry in that respect.
Awesome.
Yeah, years ago, I think this was probably right around or right before, maybe as you were starting brewing. I can't remember exactly the timing, but we brewed a beer with a brewery out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania called All Saints Brewing Company. And the brewer and owner there, his first name is Jeff. Jeff is a wonderful guy and has over 20 years professional brewing experience. So he came in here, and I was incredibly grateful to have somebody with that pedigree of experience. So when he came in, he was incredibly helpful to me, just little tips, tricks, things that made your day just a little bit easier, or things that made the product just a little bit more consistent. So that those types of collaboration experiences not only are, I think, broadening the palette in a creativity sense, but also they're broadening skill sets, actually.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome.
There's probably a lot of trial and error when you first started. And I mean, the science of brewing is pretty simple. But how much of that was a learned process? When you first started, you were like, hey, we're going to make this. And it's like, oh, God, this is bad. We can't sell this.
Sure.
And I'm sure that was a frustrating part of it, but also learning.
It was definitely a balance of the art and science of it because I think that on the science side, you have to have a disciplined, repeatable process, right? And if you don't have that, you're not going to have consistent beer, flat out. I felt like the partners that I had when I started the business and myself, I think we worked together to really hone a process. And I think that at certain points in time, it really felt like we were hitting that on all cylinders. And more on the art side, there was a lot of honesty that has to happen, right? When you're trying things from the fermenter that are suboptimal, it is difficult, right? Especially as a young business. I want to get out there. I want to get this product sold. I want to sell it to them. But if it's not something that we can really stand behind, that's when it goes down the drain. And
right.
I feel like that it would be irresponsible if a craft brewery said they never disposed of a beer. That's my belief.
Yep.
Yeah, don't sell something that doesn't meet your quality threshold,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
No, that's awesome. Well, I think on that note, we probably should cheers to some good beer. If Alec would be so kind. I don't know. Is there a flight we should try of just 4 things that are like your core that you love that you want to showcase? Or
yeah, I think that right now what we've got on tap, the ones that I would recommend trying would be I'll pick 2 and Garrett can pick 2.
Cool.
So I would say I would pick Crispy Boy and Hold the Foam. Crispy Boy is our American light lager, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but it is the clean, crisp, refreshing beer that you would detect flaws in immediately if there were any. And so we are incredibly happy with how this has turned out. We've brewed it multiple times, and it's that really familiar type of style. I think people are coming in here, they're enjoying it with the food that we just started serving. They're enjoying it on a warm day. They're enjoying it all year long, really. But it's definitely become one of our top sellers very quickly. And the Hold the Foam is one of the beers that we've had probably on and off now, mostly on for about 5 or 5.5 years.
5.5 years, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's our cappuccino stout.
Oh.
So it is a heavy hitter at 8.3%. It's got some oats in it, so it's got a nice creamy mouthfeel. It's got cold brew coffee, actually from a local collaborator in Commonplace Coffee here, based out of Pittsburgh. They have a home shop here in Indiana as well.
Yeah, I was there yesterday too.
Oh, one of my favorite places around. And in essence, that beer, I think it kind of harnesses what we want out of a nice, refreshing beer, but also having that nice creamy coffee component. So
Gotcha.
it's been one of our most popular beers since we released it.
Yeah, that one we brewed for the first time whenever I was still shadowing. So I was still, basically all I was doing at that point was just pulling the grain out, and it hasn't been off the tap list since then.
Wow.
And
So
that's when he knew he disliked mashing out. That beer. It's one of our heaviest
It's a
grain
big
notes.
one. It takes a lot.
So this first one is a crispy boy.
Yeah.
That's just a nice light beer.
Mhm.
Yep. It's got nice clarity to it. Super clean, crisp.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a beer.
it's a beer.
It's a beer.
Yep.
It's a beer flavored beer.
There it is. Beer
No,
flavored
that's
beer.
good though. That's I didn't realize too that I know this isn't a Pilsner, but I was talking to someone that Pilsner, just like this, is like the more simple, the harder it is because there's more impurities you can detect.
Yep.
And you had mentioned that about this beer.
Yep.
It's interesting. My dumb brain would think that that's the easier beer to make.
I thought it for a lot of years myself.
Yeah.
Up until I got more serious about home brewing because, as a home brewer, when you're looking at that hobby and you're looking at is what's necessary to produce a beer like this, one of the key components of it is temperature control during fermentation.
Right.
So you really have to keep that range bound and cooler. So it's not something that you can just throw in your basement necessarily and allow it to take off and ferment. So the equipment necessary, the temperature management, protocols and everything are what make this beer into what it is. So it's fascinating. It really is. I think the majority of people that come in here, they have that look of surprise when we say this is probably the most technical beer that we have.
Yeah, I would never think that.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then the other one was the
Hold the Foam.
Hold the Foam.
Yeah, that's our cappuccino stout.
Cappuccino
So
style. He was telling me about this one, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds really good."
Oh yeah, it's super flavorful. It's rich. And it's honestly been a fan favorite. I think that I've seen more people come through our doors that have said before that they're not a fan of darker beers.
Right.
Try this and just kind of be like, wow, that is something that I really could get into. So.
Hey y'all, Alan Cogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedcombos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback or go over to your YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Full disclosure, and my audience knows this, but I told you guys off camera, but I am a whiskey guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to drink a lot of beer in college. And thank you, Alec. My beautiful assistant, everyone. I developed a little bit of a digestive issue after college, and I couldn't handle beer the same way I could handle hard liquor. And I kind of gravitated away from beer. But when I was drinking beer, I was like, I'm going to have some good, like a good IPA, good craft beer, good stout, whatever. So I've kind of come full circle back to, I want to get back into beer.
Mm-hmm.
I still will drink not as much. I'll drink a bottle of whiskey just fine. And not drive, everyone, just to be clear. But so beer, I'm getting a lot more into it. And I love a good hearty stout in the winter. Being from Wisconsin, having a good coffee stout, always love that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I never could really do a pint or two in one sitting. It's
Understood.
much more of a full meal.
Same way.
Yeah.
Same way.
So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about beers like Crispy Boy. It's that I can have more than one.
right.
Yeah.
And and hey, beer has calories just like whiskey, but I think beer is a bit it can be a heavier feel in certain cases.
Right.
So I tend to go on the lighter side myself, and so I can have a few.
Yeah. Right.
And
right.
not drive.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. See, disclosure. Well, and the other thing too is it's a better bang for your buck if you can get like one or two that are a little higher ABV rather than like a Miller Lite that's 5%. Like that ain't gonna get me anywhere.
Yeah.
It's true.
I'm here for a good time. I'm gonna have 2 beers that are 15%.
I love it.
That's very good. That's tasty.
Thank you.
And you're right. That is not as offensive as a lot of thicker stouts can be that people think of a dark beer. Not for me.
Right.
It's very nice.
Yeah. We wanted to keep it more on the mellow side. I think whenever we were choosing how to use the coffee in this, actually, there's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate coffee into beer. This one actually is cold brew coffee. So cold brew is the brewing method that actually produces the least acid.
Oh,
So it's a lower acid version. It's a lower astringency version. So if you had the astringency, I think that it would clash with the bitterness of the malts sometimes. So
yeah. And so just because I'm stupid with all the science, are you just putting cold brew in the mash tank with? How does that work?
we're actually putting it in post fermentation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep. So it's a little bit easier to control that way. You're not necessarily adding something during the fermentation stage that might upset the yeast
Right.
because it can be kind of temperamental. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was that a learned thing? Did you try to do it before?
with this beer, no, we actually went straight for a cold brew for
Okay.
this one. We had brewed a beer that we're actually
Coming
about
back,
to
yeah.
release again. This was a coffee porter called New Guinea Hijacked, and this particular coffee stout came, substantially after. That was because we recognized when we were doing that coffee porter, hey, we want to avoid astringency. We did some research. We actually talked with our coffee partners in Commonplace, and they said that they thought cold brew might be the best brew method as well. So
That's
it was
cool.
good. It was good affirmation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, those are delicious. Garrett,
Awesome.
you have 2 to pick. I'm curious.
Well, you took Crispy Boy. So,
Sorry.
I'd probably say Fancy Lad, and
You
let's
gotta
go for Gone for the Day.
Gone for the day.
What were you
Nice.
thinking?
No, that's good.
Good.
That's good.
Cool. So, Fancy Lad, tell me about it.
Fancy Lad is an English dark mild.
Okay.
It's 3.4%, but I think it offers a lot of flavors. A lot of people think because it's low ABV, it's going to be thin and not a ton of flavor. But with the malts that we use, I think it presents really nicely with a little bit of like caramel, malty sweetness. And it's 3.4, so you can have more than one and not have to feel bad about it. But it's not really aggressive on the palate either, so it's not going to mess. If you have another beer, it's not going to mess up your palate.
Okay.
It's another one that presents very, very clear. It's got a nice amber tinge to it.
It almost looks like an amber.
Mm-hmm.
What was the style of this?
English dark mild.
English dark mild.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a style you see in the commercial marketplace very much. I don't think that there are a lot of mass marketed examples of this style, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a delicious style.
Yeah.
It's very accessible to folks that don't like bitter beers. And again, folks that don't like dark beers, I point them to this myself because it is, as the style indicates, mild.
Right.
It's not overpowering. It's not bitter.
Yeah.
It's another one that you have to have like really good procedures in place because it's another one that has a delicate flavor profile where
Sure.
you can get too sweet, you can get butterscotch in there, you can get a bunch of different flavors that can present themselves that you wouldn't want in there. So it's another one that's very technical in how you have to brew it.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't think I've had this style before.
Mhm.
Maybe at some point, but the color is almost like a brain breaker for me because you taste it. It's like that's
Right.
almost as light as the Crispy Boy,
Yeah.
but it has more flavor.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Cool.
Indeed. All in the malt choices. So that
Mhm.
one I've been amazed. We talked a little bit before about being surprised as to what sell or something might sell or something won't. This one, when we first released it, I was absolutely shocked because it's a style that most people don't know.
Right.
It's a darker beer. It's on the darker side. A lot of folks, like I said, they don't find that to be super appealing. But this beer sold incredibly well for us over the counter in a tap room because I think we had that chance to have the conversation about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's something that is really important about this industry is the relationships that you develop with your customers and having conversations and discussing like how you got from point A to point B. I think it helps people really enjoy the beer. And I think that's what's great about the small town and having regulars is that you can have conversations with everyone on a weekly basis, basically. And they become close like friends, honestly. A lot of them have become friends. And
I don't know how often you both are back here serving beer, but I'm sure it's once in a while.
Yeah, I would say that we both are around the tap room pretty frequently, and it's something that, I love it. It's really incredible to kind of experience it from the different angles that I have, from actually being back here and pouring the beers, from making the beers myself, to being out in the tap room and hanging out, enjoying everybody's company. So
I think that perception in the market of that, locally made, locally brewed, the person's from here, and also accessibility. Yeah. I mean, here I am talking to you guys right now on this show. I didn't have to go through a PR firm. You're not in some corporate office upstairs, right? And I'm sure one day it'd be awesome to have that. I'm a big corporate monster, but you're pouring a beer for someone that someone has a question about it, and you can educate them about the beer, and that I think that alone makes it almost taste better and makes them want to give you their money and be a regular customer.
Absolutely.
Even for me, who's passing through, I won't stay here. I won't be here all the time, but I'll know that, hey, those guys are doing some awesome stuff. Yeah, it sticks with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of it is creating a full experience around it.
Yeah,
and that's I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean and probably another point of pride too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Work with your customers.
Yeah, I've had this thought for a long time that. Whenever we first opened, it was really interesting to go from brewing beers as a home brewer, sharing them with your friends and family, and probably getting a little bit of bias in their reviews, right? And probably a lot of positive reviews. And so coming into the commercial marketplace was different in that sense. You're opening up to a different type of vulnerability. And what I found especially valuable, like we've already talked about, but to be really honing in on it, was the ability to discuss the intent. So the intent of each one of these beers. We're, in a sense, talking about the intentions of each one right now. And like you said, it builds on the whole thing. It helps you remember it better. It helps you to appreciate it better, even if it's something that, if you had this out of context, you might try something and say, oh, this is good, or oh, this is okay, or I don't understand this. And so I think that having the ability to discuss that context, and on my side and our side, having the ability to write the context is really, it's really amazing. And it's something that I've been grateful for having the opportunity to do.
Yeah. Well, I think even for just craft brewing in general, majority of them have the same kind of setup where it's open air. You can see the tanks, you can see where the process is done. And it's like I'm having the beer where it was made, where you've touched it and bottled it, canned it, etc. Yeah. And that gives a little bit more gravitas to the experience.
Absolutely.
It definitely adds to the atmosphere.
For
sure. Being able to see it from point A to point B. It's weird. That was one of the big disconnects I had when I first started, was from me brewing it to it being out and being consumed. I was like, I don't understand how this is the same thing that I was making and people were actually enjoying it. So I've been able to get more used to that, but at first it was kind of messed with my mind a little bit. But
that's a pretty cool experience to have.
Definitely
a little out of body.
Yeah, for sure. For sure,
definitely.
So the fourth one was what? The
Gone for the Day.
Gone for the Day.
So West Coast IPA.
Okay, I love my IPAs.
This is the beer that got me into brewing the style. Anyhow,
okay.
I started drinking an Evo Lot 3. I think they're based out of Maryland, but it's a West Coast IPA, and that was the first like non-Miller Lite that I enjoyed drinking, and I started drinking more of it, and then you guys opened up, and I was like, wow, I love craft now. I gotta start going here. So,
yep, this one actually, it's been on tap almost entirely the whole time that we've been open.
Okay.
So that was one of the 5 beers that we opened with on our tap list, Gone for the Day. So yeah, definitely one that people have been drinking for a long while here at Noble Stein.
I can see why it's good. I mean, I'm biased. I love IPAs, but it's very refreshing.
Yep.
It's good.
Yeah, easy drinker.
Yeah.
We've been, it's one of the things that's been interesting, we've seen a bit of a resurgence with this beer.
Big time.
So we started selling barbecue at the beginning of January, so almost 3 months ago, and this beer has picked up significantly alongside that food. So I think that it works perfectly with barbecue, especially some of the cuts with a little bit more fat on it.
Yeah.
The acidity in that IPA really helps to cut through, clean the palate after having a nice bite of brisket or pulled pork, something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do some food and beer pairings now.
Exactly. Yep. There you go. There you go.
Was there a when you started? Was there a beer that you're like? Well, for both of you, probably different timeline. But when you started the company, was there like, this is what I want to make? This is what I want to be known for. This is my baby. Is that?
We didn't. I really was of the opinion that I wanted to be known for having a variety of styles.
Okay.
That was really the core, because I felt that in my beer journey, one of the things that I most appreciated was how there are so many different options. And I thought that there was still a gap with public perception and knowledge of beer and in that concept. I would even talk to my parents, for instance, and I would say, I went and had all these different beers. Like, oh, what? I don't even know what that is. Like, what does that taste like? Or what does this taste like? So as I was homebrewing, I was sharing different things with them, and they would, I would listen to them and what they would taste and learn from them too. And it was, I thought that as a value proposition was unique, at the time. So that's how we've been rolling ever since.
That's awesome. Was there one that when you were like, I'm going to be a brewmaster, I have a history degree, that you were like, you know what, I want to make this beer. This is what I want to do. This is Garrett's beer.
I transitioned into liking the Kolsch that they had on Bridge. It was like the style that I kind of transitioned to after IPAs. And when I started working here, I was like, I really want to get good at making that beer, because it's another one that's really simple and clear. And
he got good at making that.
not bad. But that became like my go-to goal, was to have a really good batch of that. And I knew if I could brew that beer specifically, because I think that at that time we hadn't had any lagers really. I mean, there was Salvatore,
one or two,
but we hadn't really gone into
nothing consistent,
the really like simple flavor profiles. And I was like, if I can nail this, I think that I can brew a lot of different styles, because it's another one that's temperature based and really process based. So I knew if I could nail that one, I could probably do more different styles.
Is there anything that you have not done yet that you really want to?
There is. That would be the true like wild sours.
Ooh.
So non-kettle sours.
Yeah.
We've talked about that for years. We've had a lot of people ask if we were going to do it. In terms of what we can see here in the shot, our brewery is not much bigger than
it's not
this,
much more
right?
than
It's,
this.
it's just a little bit farther down. And it's one of those scenarios where with those particular microorganisms that are the fermentors, so to speak, it is a little bit risky. You run the risk of contamination and impact on other beers. So we haven't taken the leap for those. But it's something that if we were ever to see a major facility expansion by way of having a space that was, in a sense, isolated, quarantined off from the rest of the brew space, that I would absolutely love to try it.
Is there anything you want to do?
Honestly, same.
Because
those are, like, that style I think is the only one that we haven't really checked off. I mean, we've done barrel-aged stuff and all those different kind of beers, but we haven't really gotten into the wild sours.
Yeah. Is there so coming from the whiskey world, I know the bourbon barrel aged is kind of on our radar as like, oh, that tastes like bourbon. Have you found that the market wants that more, or is it just kind of like it's a gimmick in a way that we don't want to spend too much time doing it?
That's a really good question. I think that industry-wise, it's probably a question that each brewery would answer slightly differently. I think that there are a large number of breweries that have released barrel-aged beers, us included. And some of those breweries, I think of Voodoo in particular, have become very well known for that line, among their other good beers, of course, but that particular line has garnered very, very specific attention. I think that having the space for it and having a committed cellarman or a committed staff to that concept is really what's necessary, because it is complicated. It's not necessarily so directly labor intensive every day, but it is very important that there's a financial commitment to it. So I think that the short answer is, for us, our facility is a bit too small to be doing it on the regular.
Right.
But for places that have a larger facility and find that it sells consistently for them, I think it's a great idea. I think that the complexity that you can get out of that is, for me, it's this wonderful go-between between the whiskey world, which I also dabble in, and the beer world. So
Absolutely.
I think this tank back here is the reason we don't have any barrel aged stuff, because we used to have a barrel aging rack right here where we had a decent number of maybe 4 or 5 different beers barrel aging, and I think the demand was just too high for other styles, and so we just ended up adding tank space.
Sure. Well, I have to ask too, because you pointed it out. I know we have the Gosling. We have Ryan Gosling. It's in the shot. I'm going to point him out. And I know it's a thing in the beer world to name your tanks.
Yeah.
So they're office themed, right?
Yeah.
We got Gabe right behind you.
Tall guy.
The tall guy.
The tall guy. That's great. I love it. Is there, office fans, right?
Oh yeah. Big time. I think that I would consider myself to be like a casual fan. I really like the show, and I've probably watched it maybe one time the whole way through, with a bunch of episodes having seen them more than once.
Yeah.
But I think that Garrett has a repertoire of quotes that I honestly can't fathom.
Alex the only one that gets them.
Yeah, it's actually like he said, and this is, I think, completely accurate, that I've begun asking, what is that from? Right? And he takes that as a huge compliment. And I would say probably 70% of the time it's from The Office.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like just deep cuts.
Yeah, it was my go to sleep show for a long time.
Yep.
So I have lost count of how many times I've actually watched the series through. So
Well, we're kindred spirits in that regard. I love The Office. I grew up watching Friends, and then I watched The Office, and The Office is number one. When I first started dating my wife, she had never seen it.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, we're gonna fix that. now we both watch it nonstop. It's
great.
It's great. It's great background noise. 'Cause
oh my god!
At any point, I can just turn my brain off and do something else, and then all of a sudden, there's that one part where Dwight's doing this. I'm like, I know exactly where they're doing it and why they're doing it. What the timeline is.
Yeah, you're cleaning and you're just like,
Yeah.
that part.
Yep. It's not uncommon now that I'll come in, pretty straight faced and say to Garrett, hey, can you get me that rundown by the end of the day?
What the hell's a rundown?
You fax it to your dad.
Faxing my dad a rundown.
That's awesome. So my dad, his name is Michael Scott. His middle name is Scott.
Okay.
And he's not a Office fan. He's seen it. But so I'm like, you don't have no idea how great your name is.
Could use this.
Yeah, you could use this.
I love it.
Are there any misconceptions that you like to break? Because I know a lot of people I talk to within the distillery world and the winery world and the brewing world, it's like, these guys are just drinking all day and having a good time.
Yeah.
Which you laugh because that's not true. You guys are here doing work.
Yeah.
You're sampling, of course. And at the end of the day, I'm sure you can pour yourself a beer.
Yeah.
But during the day, you're not just sloshed.
No. Yeah, there's definitely an element of discipline that comes with that too. I think that a lot of things have come up with the pretty intense growth in the brewery industry. It's a wonderful hobby, it truly is. But I do think that you have to be careful with boundaries, not only in the work side, but just in general.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful hobby, but it is something that you have to watch for moderation. That's the bottom line.
Be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even on this side of the bar, I also have to be cognizant of.
Oh, of course.
Let's try every sample. I have to drive home.
I do think there's also some other interesting misconceptions that come alongside just small business in general.
Sure.
And it's frequently like I absolutely love the conversations that we have across the bar with folks. I do think that there's sometimes misconceptions about changes and developments and growth in small business, because from time to time there are questions that arise about, what about this strategy or that strategy?
Right.
It's been very interesting for me to process a lot of that feedback over the years, because there's a certain level of transparency that you want to have, and at the same time you don't want to bore people, and at the same time you also want to be running the business the way that you and your team wants to run the business. So it's an interesting thing to navigate. It's something I've learned a lot about in the 7+ years that we've been here. So
yeah, I mean, being a small business in general is difficult, and as an owner and an operator, you clearly have a relationship with your employees that you could collaborate and work together and do stuff. Have there been any awesome Wazu ideas that have come across from either an employee or a customer that said, "Hey, have you tried this?" And you're like, you know what? Let's try it.
It's interesting. I think that it's kind of a mosaic principle.
Yeah.
I think that there have been a lot of ideas put forth that in some combination with something that you've said or I've said or someone that's worked here said, it ends up manifesting.
Yeah.
I think that one of those, in fact, came from part came from my wife, part came from Nate that works here. It was actually how we ended up doing our food application. So we actually bought a food trailer instead of building out a traditional kitchen. So this was one of those examples where, I don't know that, I think looking back, I would have never anticipated that it would have been executed like that. But yeah, there have definitely been a few. That's the big one that comes to mind.
What about any happy accidents? Anything that you didn't intend on making that turned out actually really well? And of course, the follow-up would be any horrible disasters.
I don't think there have
Nothing
been
really
any
comes to
horrible
mind.
disasters.
Yeah.
Happy accidents. I think some of the sours that we've made have been kind of
Yeah.
happy accidents.
Okay.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Blue is not a flavor.
Blue is not a
Office
flavor.
reference,
Seltzer.
right?
Yeah. The seltzers are,
Yeah.
whenever we run out of ideas, I just pick up some Blue
Electrolyte.
sports drink and put it in there.
Blue sports drink.
Just fermented Gatorade.
And-
Well, I mean, I don't know.
But it's another one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not so proud of it, but it sells really well.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go with it. But another Office reference, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Blue is
Yeah.
not a flavor.
I saw that episode the other day. Ryan, blue is not a flavor.
Blue Blast.
So blue raspberry is not a real fruit.
No. I think I knew that when I was about 7. I was like, this just seems like absolute garbage. I don't think this is real.
Yeah. Yep. And I still love blue raspberry
I love
flavor.
blue
I can't get on board.
No?
I can't get on board. No.
Oh man.
It's not for me. I never liked it. I was always skeptical. I don't know. 7 years old, I'm like,
raspberry and lime.
It's a
raspberry and lime?
That's blue raspberry.
It's lime.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That makes me like it less.
So blue raspberry sour coming at it very soon.
That might get the kibosh. I don't know. We'll see.
Just to wrap things up, anything that we can expect from Noble Stein in the near future that's coming out, in the next year that you're really excited to tell us about, or what does the future hold for you guys?
Yeah, it's the future holds. I think a lot of what we've been working on the last 3 months in our food service.
Yeah.
And I know Garrett hit the nail on the head too in talking about our lager portfolio.
Yeah.
We continue to expand that. And the other thing that I'd be remiss not to mention is the community projects we have. How many do we have this year? It's
Skyrocketed this year. We've had a lot of community involvement. I think it's just showing that we have a dedication to this area and helping like different nonprofits or different small businesses like staying connected to this town and helping out this community as much as they've helped us out over the last 7.5 years.
absolutely.
It's been really good to be noticed for how much we've connected to this community, and we have 5 or 6 community projects that are coming out this year.
Yes.
That's cool.
It's a lot more than the past few years, and we're very excited and grateful for the community for showing us support, and we're excited to show it back.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, another point of pride, right? And as much as I'm sure as an owner, you would love to have everything just distributed to all 50 states. But at the same time, you're still in this locale and you're doing your thing, and that's awesome.
Yep.
I love to see
indeed.
it. Well, you guys are doing some awesome stuff. You have some great beer. I'm a customer, and we have kinship with our friend Alec here. So
There you go. Love it.
keep working them hard.
I'll try.
He does a great job.
But I appreciate your hospitality and sharing your story with me.
course.
And I'll be back. But
Yeah.
cheers to you both.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank
Of
you.
course. Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!